I left my husband after he neglected me for years and let his toxic mom mistreat me. Now he's trying to blame me for ruining our family, but it's too late. Hi, Stefan. Maybe you will finally listen. And if you're wondering if you can just speed home and stop me from doing this and leaving, it's too late. I'm sending you this after I've already loaded everything in the car and left. Don't worry, I spoke with our landlords and took my name off the lease. I've set up a direct deposit for the next month's rent. After that, you're on your own. Buddy, I guess you're wondering why. I'm guessing you'll act like you're completely blindsided, right? Because you've done absolutely nothing wrong and you're a great husband and father-to-be, aren't you? Well, buddy, let me break it down for you in a language you understand. I, 29F, have been married to my husband, 35M, for 5 years, and we've been together for nearly 10. On paper, everything seemed fine, but in reality, our marriage has been anything but. I've reached my breaking point, and I need to know if I'm the one in the wrong here. From the beginning, my MIL has been a nightmare. She made everything about her from day one. At our wedding, she wore white, claiming it was a family tradition. It wasn't. She constantly criticizes me, from my cooking to my appearance. I'll never forget the time she called me fat at a family gathering, right in front of everyone. And what did my husband do? Nothing. Not a single word to defend me. It didn't stop there. She has accidentally destroyed my belongings, including my grandmother's necklace, which she threw out because it looked like cheap costume jewelry. She's gone out of her way to make me feel small and unwelcome in my own home. But every time I tried to talk to my husband about it, he'd brush it off, saying I was overreacting or being too emotional. And then there's my husband. He's always on Reddit, constantly giving strangers relationship advice, which is laughable considering how he treats me. He spends more time rating women's boobs on Reddit than talking to me. Literally. And just so you know, the last pair he rated weren't a 4 out of 10. They were a 10 out of 10. Yeah, he's got plenty of time to do that, but can't be bothered to remember anything about my life. He'll forget my birthday, our anniversary, even simple things like what I'm working on or what's important to me, but he has a perfect memory for his work schedule and things that matter to him. When we fight, he becomes incredibly hostile and always throws in a sarcastic buddy at the end of his sentences, like I'm some acquaintance he can barely tolerate. And he never cleans. The house, the dishes, laundry, you name it. It's all on me. It's like he thinks being an adult is optional, as long as he's got his job and his Reddit account. The final straw came a few weeks ago. I'm 5 months pregnant with our first child, a daughter. My MIL started making comments about how she'll have to whip the girl into shape and how she'll raise her to be tough because I'm too soft. When I told my husband that I didn't want his mother to have too much influence on our daughter, especially with the way she treats me, he just laughed it off, saying his mother means well and that I was overthinking it. But the moment that truly broke me was when we were talking about future childcare, and my husband suggested that his mother should watch our daughter while we work. I told him I wasn't comfortable with that, especially considering how his mother treats me. And he snapped. He called me paranoid and said I should get over it, because his mother was going to be a big part of our daughter's life, whether I liked it or not. This is the same woman who believes corporal punishment is okay. I've seen her hit my husband's nephew for the smallest things, and no one does anything about it. It's like they're all living in some kind of cult, and I'm finally waking up to the reality of what's going on. If he wouldn't stand up for me, how could I expect him to stand up for our child? I started to fear for what kind of environment our daughter would grow up in, a place where she might be belittled or bullied by her own grandmother, with a father who wouldn't do anything to stop it. Oh, and did I mention that he missed our first ultrasound? His mother needed him to help her with something urgent. It turned out to be fixing her Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi. He chose that over seeing our daughter for the first time. That told me everything I needed to know about where I stand in his life. So I packed up and left. I'm done living like this. Oh, and in case you're wondering, I've already contacted a lawyer. You can't scare me into complying anymore because I have all those texts. You know exactly which ones I'm talking about. So, Stefan, I wish you all the best in your future marriage. with your mother and the women of Reddit whose boobs you don't even deserve. Am I the asshole for leaving my husband after he neglected me for years, let his mother mistreat me, and made me fear for our future daughter's safety? Update 1. Some people on Reddit have been pretending to know me and spreading false claims. They've said I'm a deadbeat who doesn't work and that Stefan has 2 jobs to support me. They even fabricated a story about a neighbor who supposedly is a good friend of ours, saying I've been sleeping around and moving in with the guys I supposedly had affairs with. None of this is true. We don't live in South Carolina or the UK, and we're not friends with any of our neighbors. I have never cheated on Stefan, and I work and make slightly more than him, just $1 an hour difference. I suspect these claims might be from trolls brigading or Stefan's friends trying to make me regret posting about this. I am safe and staying with family, which is all I'm going to say for now. I'm working with my lawyer to ensure our safety, and that's all I can disclose at this time. For women who find themselves in my situation and are dealing with a lease, consult with a pro bono lawyer who specializes in rental rights. That's what I did. They can give you advice specific to your country or region. In my case, I was able to move out because Stefan and I had both signed a lease contract and had completed the minimum rental period. After my free consultation, I worked with my landlords, who are a lovely older couple, to arrange my departure. So don't be scared. You can be scared, but there are things you can do to protect yourself. Also, make sure to run a credit check on yourself. I did. And it's another issue I'm addressing. As for recent developments, there hasn't been much new. Stefan is clearly desperate. He and my MIL have both had meltdowns and launched separate smear campaigns. My MIL has spread false claims, including that I'm an unfit mother and that I've been abandoning my responsibilities. I don't plan to answer these claims publicly. I'm collecting all evidence I have, especially since she has nothing to back up her accusations, but I have everything to back up mine. So, no, Stefan, this is not going to be a he said, she said situation. He deleted his Reddit account, claiming it was because one person found him. But then he told me a bunch of people sent him death threats, which seems impossible and contradictory. He did send his friends to my post, and I think they sent me some unsavory DMs and comments. Allegedly. When I tried to talk to Stefan, he always made me feel like I was going crazy. Whenever I raised concerns or expressed feelings, he would dismiss them, belittle my emotions, and make me second-guess myself. For instance, I'd come home to find that he had invited people over without informing me in advance. When I brought it up, he'd insist that he had mentioned it earlier, even though I knew he hadn't. Another time, I planned a special meal and asked him for a specific dish, but he claimed I had requested something completely different. When I reminded him of what I had actually asked for, he'd argue that I must have forgotten my own request. Stefan would also insist he had completed tasks that I had actually done myself. For example, he would claim he had handled a household chore when I was the one who actually took care of it. When I pointed this out, he'd dismiss my recollection and insist that he had done it. Even in conversations about our relationship, Stefan would frequently deny things he had said or done. If I brought up issues I had with his mother's behavior, he'd claim, "You never mentioned that before. You're just being overdramatic." This made me question whether I had ever truly discussed these problems or if I was indeed overreacting. At one point, I was so convinced that I had early onset dementia or schizophrenia that I started to question my own sanity. I felt lost and confused, struggling to distinguish between reality and his version of events. I began to document our interactions just to keep track of what was actually happening. But Stefan would always find a way to twist things, saying, "You must be misremembering," even though I had clear evidence to the contrary. Feeling so powerless, I realized that sharing my story online was the only way to present my truth in a manner he couldn't manipulate. I wanted to ensure that there was a clear and unchangeable record of what had happened. Posting about my experiences was a crucial step in reclaiming my voice and finding support from others who might understand my situation. It was a way to take control of my narrative after feeling so lost and doubting myself for so long. Thank you all for your support during this difficult time. Update 2. Hey everyone! Thanks again for the support on my last post. It's been a few weeks since my initial update, and things have gotten even more Strange. I don't know how to explain it other than to say that I feel like I've been living in a bizarre twilight zone of events, each one making me question what's real and what's just more manipulation from Stefan. First, let's get this out of the way. Stefan found out where I've been staying. He sent me a barrage of texts, most of them alternating between demanding I come home and calling me selfish for tearing the family apart. The texts were so inconsistent that I honestly wondered if it was even him typing. Sometimes they'd be all caps raging about how I'd destroyed our marriage, and then, in the next breath, he'd be apologizing and saying we could figure it out together. This would be followed by his classic sarcastic buddy that made me want to throw my phone across the room. Then came the voicemail. I didn't even listen to it at first because, honestly, I was just too exhausted by the back and forth. But when I finally hit play, I was floored. It wasn't Stefan. It was his mother. She went on a whole tirade about how I was ungrateful, how she had done nothing but try to help, and how I was robbing my daughter of a strong family structure. She rambled about how I wouldn't be able to raise a child without their wisdom and that no daughter-in-law of hers was going to raise a weak child. But the kicker? At the end, she straight up said, "If you don't come to your senses, you're going to regret this for the rest of your life." I played that voicemail for my lawyer. It wasn't the smoking gun I hoped for, but it was another piece of the growing puzzle of intimidation and gaslighting. The threats were subtle, but they were there. It gets worse. A few days after that voicemail, my car wouldn't start. I thought it was just a dead battery, so I called a mechanic to come check it out. When the guy arrived, he gave me this look like he was concerned but didn't want to scare me. Turns out, someone had tampered with the engine. There were wires that had been cut, specifically ones that could have led to some serious problems if I had been driving. I'm not saying Stefan did it. I don't have proof. But I'm also not saying it. At this point, I'm being extra cautious. I've installed cameras where I'm staying, and my family has been keeping an eye out for any strange activity around the house. My lawyer is advising me on the next steps, and we're working on getting a restraining order if things escalate any further. As if that wasn't enough, my meal has been spreading more rumors about me. But this time she's moved on from accusing me of infidelity to saying I'm mentally unstable. Apparently, she's been telling anyone who will listen that I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and that I'm prone to violent outbursts. Never mind the fact that I've never been diagnosed with anything of the sort. She's even tried to get a wellness check done on me by the police, claiming that she's worried for my safety. Thankfully, I had a heads up from a mutual friend before that went down, so I was prepared when they showed up. But here's the twist that I didn't see coming. I got a call from Stefan's brother. We've never been close. He's a lot like Stefan in many ways, but less obnoxious about it. I figured he was calling to give me some half-hearted, come back and fix this speech. But instead, he dropped a bomb on me. Stefan has been hiding a lot more than just his Reddit obsession and his mommy issues. Apparently, Stefan's been financially tied to his mother in a way that I never knew about. He's been funneling money to her for years, paying off debts she's racked up from God knows what. Gambling? Shopping addiction? I have no idea. And his brother didn't give me details. But what he did tell me was that Stefan's financial support of his mother has put a significant strain on our own finances, something Stefan conveniently never mentioned to me. This explains a lot, like how, despite both of us working, we never seemed to have any savings. Every time I brought it up, Stefan would brush it off or tell me we'd had unexpected expenses. Turns out, those expenses were his mother's. It also explains why he's been so insistent on her being involved in our lives. The more I think about it, the more it feels like his mother has had this invisible hold over him, and by extension me, our entire marriage. I'm starting to realize just how deep her influence goes. Stefan isn't just a passive bystander in all this. He's actively choosing to prioritize his mother over me and our unborn child. I just never realized how bad it was until now. To be honest, I feel like I've been living in a fog for the past 5 years. Every time I tried to bring up concerns, Stefan would gaslight me into thinking I was imagining things. I thought I was overreacting or being too sensitive. But now, with everything coming to light, I see how manipulated I've been. It wasn't just about his mother's interference or his neglect. This was a systematic breakdown of our marriage, where I was kept in the dark while Stefan made decisions that affected every aspect of our lives without consulting me. The emotional weight of it all has been overwhelming, but at the same time, it's also freeing. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm seeing the full picture. And it's not pretty, but it's clear. I'm taking action. I've frozen our joint accounts, and my lawyer is working on securing financial records that will prove Stefan's been siphoning off money without my knowledge. It's going to be a long road, but at least I'm finally moving forward. As for Stefan, he's still sending texts, alternating between apologies and more gaslighting. I haven't responded, and I don't plan to. The next communication he'll get from me will be through my lawyer. Thank you all again for your support. I've had so many messages from women who have been in similar situations, and it's been eye-opening. It's helped me realize that I'm not crazy, and I'm not alone in this. I'll update you all again when there's more to share. But for now, I'm focusing on getting through the legal side of things and making sure my baby and I are safe. Stay strong, and if anyone else out there is going through something similar, trust your gut. You're not overreacting, and you deserve better. Update 3. Well, this is it. The big, final update. I wasn't sure I'd even make it this far, but here I am, navigating the fallout of a life that feels like it's been turned upside down, only to find out I've been standing on my own 2 feet all along. First things first, Stefan has been officially served. We're going through the motions of divorce proceedings now, and while it's emotionally draining, I'm grateful for the clarity. My lawyer has been incredible, and I've gathered more than enough evidence to prove the financial manipulation, gaslighting, and overall neglect I've endured for years. But there's more. So much more. You remember how I mentioned in my last update that Stefan had been sending money to his mother? Well, it turns out that wasn't even the half of it. Stefan has been funneling money to a woman who isn't his mother. When I first heard this from my lawyer, I thought it was just another bill or maybe some weird scheme to hide money from me, but nope. This woman? She's his ex. Yeah, you read that right. His ex. From way back before we even got together. My lawyer found out when they were combing through our joint accounts. And there it was. Multiple transactions over the years to the same person. At first, I thought maybe it was some old debt he owed or something. But when I confronted my lawyer, they laid it out clearly. This wasn't a one-time payment. It was consistent, like clockwork, every few months. And it wasn't small amounts either. We're talking thousands of dollars. Now, before you jump to conclusions, let me clarify. I don't think he's been cheating on me in the traditional sense. At least I hope not. From what I can tell, this ex has been leaning on Stefan for financial help for years. Whether that's because they had some unresolved relationship business, or if he's just that much of a pushover when it comes to women in his life, I don't know. I don't care, to be honest. What I do care about is the fact that he's been lying to me for our entire marriage. I couldn't believe it when I first saw the proof. I mean, I thought I knew Stefan, despite all the issues we had. I thought his problems boiled down to his toxic relationship with his mother, his addiction to Reddit, and his utter neglect of me and our marriage. But this was a whole other level of betrayal. For years, I've been shouldering the burden of trying to make our life work. Financially, emotionally, mentally, while he's been out here giving away our money to some woman he used to date. And for what? Guilt? A sense of duty? Or something else I don't even want to think about? Here's where it gets even messier. I decided to confront Stefan. I know, I said I wouldn't talk to him again, but I had to hear his side of this. Maybe it was some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe there was an explanation, even if it was a garbage one. So I called him. The conversation, well, it went about as well as you'd expect. He answered the phone, sounding all confused and surprised, like he wasn't expecting me to ever reach out again. I asked him point blank, "Who is her name, and why have you been sending her money for the past 5 years?" Silence. Then, he stammered something about how it wasn't what I thought, and how He was just helping her out because she'd fallen on hard times. He said that she had some kind of medical issue, and he felt like it was his responsibility to step in. But the thing is, Stefan has never mentioned this woman to me. Not once. And trust me, if my husband was financially supporting another woman, even if it was under the guise of being charitable, that's something I should have been aware of. I called him out on that. I told him that this wasn't about being a good Samaritan, and even if it was, he had no right to do it behind my back. We're married. We were supposed to be partners. You don't just funnel money to your ex like some secret benefactor without ever mentioning it to your wife. And you know what he said? You wouldn't understand. You've always been so judgmental. It's not like I was cheating or anything. I was just trying to help someone. That was his defense. That I'm too judgmental to understand why he needed to send thousands of dollars to his ex behind my back. He acted like I was the unreasonable one in this situation, like I was overreacting for not being cool with my husband secretly funding someone else's life. The gaslighting continued, and it hit me in that moment just how much of my own reality I'd let him warp over the years. This was normal for him. Lying, manipulating, hiding things. He genuinely couldn't see why what he'd done was so wrong. I told him I was done. Completely done. Not that I hadn't already made that clear by leaving, but this felt like the final nail in the coffin. I told him I didn't care what excuse he had. Whether it was guilt or some lingering feelings for this ex, I was finished. And our daughter? She's not going to be raised by a man who can't even be honest with his wife, let alone a man who lets his mother treat his family like trash and uses our hard-earned money to bail out an old flame. He tried to argue, but I hung up. I haven't spoken to him since. In the days following that call, I felt this strange mix of rage and relief. Rage, because it was yet another betrayal piled on top of everything else. But relief, because it finally felt like I was free of all of it. I'm not stuck in this endless cycle of trying to make sense of his lies anymore. I know the truth now, and it's ugly, but at least it's out in the open. I'm not questioning myself anymore. That brings me to where I am now. The divorce is moving forward, and I've gotten some amazing support from my family, my lawyer, and even people on Reddit. I've made the decision to go for full custody of my daughter. With everything that's come out, the financial deceit, the manipulation, the toxic influence of his mother, I can't trust Stefan to be a stable father figure in her life. I want her to grow up in an environment where she feels safe, loved, and respected, not in a house where secrets and lies are the norm. I know some people might think I'm being too harsh or vindictive by going for full custody, but honestly, I have to think about what's best for my daughter. I don't want her growing up in a household where she's constantly subjected to her grandmother's toxic behavior or her father's emotional unavailability. And I sure as hell don't want her to ever feel like she's second best to some woman her dad can't let go of from his past. As for Stefan, I don't know what he's going to do next. I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to spin this whole thing into some sob story about how I abandoned him and ruined his life. But I've stopped caring about his version of the truth. The only thing that matters to me now is making sure my daughter and I are safe and happy. So that's where I'm at. I'm moving forward one step at a time. It's not easy, and there are still days when I feel overwhelmed by everything that's happened. But at least now, I feel like I have control over my own life again. I'm not living under Stefan's shadow, constantly questioning my own sanity. I'm free. Thank you, Reddit, for listening to my story, for your kind words, and for your advice. It's been a lifeline in ways I didn't expect. To anyone out there who's dealing with a situation like mine, trust yourself. Don't let anyone gaslight you into thinking your feelings aren't valid. You deserve to be heard, respected, and loved for who you are, not manipulated into being someone else's version of enough. And I'll probably be taking a break from posting for a while, at least until the divorce is finalized and life settles down a bit. But I'll check in when I can, and I hope my story can help someone else out there find the strength to leave a toxic situation. Wish me luck, Reddit. It's going to be a long road, but I'm ready to walk it. Stay strong, everyone.